Buffalo herds living in Yellowstone National Park are under fire. Many of the animals carry the disease brucellosis, which causes livestock and some wildlife to abort their fetuses. In an effort to rid the bison of the disease, a new vaccine is being tested at the Wildlife Health Lab in Caldwell. The experimental project requires calves to be captured and tested within hours of their birth, and that's not easy with mom around.
If we can get the mother to go down, I want to get on the bison first on its head, get its eyes covered, okay? If she throws me aside, that's okay, but once I have control of her, maybe one of you guys can.
It's sort of like a pregame pep talk. Wildlife veterinarian Dave Hunter and his team are discussing the game plan. The opposing squad, over 30 pregnant female bison, are big, husky players with massive shoulders.
First rule is nobody gets hurt. No heroics required. Second rule is if you see something that bothers you about what's happening with the bison, don't be afraid to speak up.
Nothing like this project has ever been done before with wild bison, so each step in the process is a stride into new territory.
Hey, slow down, M.A.
It began last winter in Yellowstone National Park. Scientists estimate that at least half of the bison population carries the cattle disease called brucellosis. This year's severe weather drove large numbers of the buffalo out of the park to seek forage in lower elevations. Over 1,000 of these animals were either shot outright or sent to slaughter in compliance with state law. Although it's never been documented, the fear is that the big shaggy beast may transmit the disease to domestic livestock, threatening the brucellosis-free status of the beef industry in the states that surround the park. In March, 35 of the doomed animals were rounded up and then separated from the rest of the herd. Each was a female that had tested negative for brucellosis, and every one of them was pregnant. They had been rescued from the slaughterhouse to take part in an experimental project testing the safety of a vaccine for brucellosis. A third of the bison were injected with a harmless saline solution. These would make up the control group. The other two-thirds of the animals were vaccinated with 2 different dosages of the brucellosis vaccine RB51. Sporting ear tags and horn protectors made from garden hose, the big beasts were loaded into a cattle truck and hauled 900 miles from Gardner, Montana to the Wildlife Health Lab in Caldwell, Idaho. The federal government hopes to eliminate brucellosis in domestic livestock by 1998, and at that point, it is believed the greater Yellowstone ecosystem will remain the only area in the United States where the disease is still prevalent. But the hope is that eventually Yellowstone's wildlife will be free of the disease too. This safety study on the vaccine RB51 is one of the first small steps towards that goal.
Okay, remember, try not to move around much in the back of the rigs.
A new baby bison was born sometime in the night, and the little calf is doing its best to stick close to mom. The scientists need to somehow separate the pair from the rest of the unruly herd, shoot a drugging dart into the mom, and then grab the calf. Blood will be drawn from both the cow and calf, and then various further samples will be taken from each animal. These will be tested to determine if the vaccine affected the birthing process.
Breakfast!
The tentative game plan is to drive the feeding trucks into the enclosure and then use them as a protective barrier to keep the rest of the herd away from the scientists as they work the cow and calf.
Are we having to be innovative as we go along? Absolutely. We are able to do a project similar to this in the field. To have 33 animals in close proximity and try to get the same information on a vaccine study has never been done. There are no ground rules. So as we go along, we have to make sure, first of all, that no person gets hurt, that we're not doing any damage to those cows or their calves, and that we can do it in a manner to justify us having these animals here. So every day we kind of change protocol to see what works easier. Is that her right there staring at us? Okay, now she's got her head down again. Okay, just kind of pull forward.
Research projects in Yellowstone Park have shown that when a bison is darted and begins to show signs of weakness, the rest of the herd tends to rally around the stricken individual, a situation the veterinarian team is trying to avoid today. But the veterinarian team gets a big break. The baby bison has wandered alone into one of the holding pens, and within minutes, Dave Hunter has the bawling calf in his arms.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Okay.
The team springs into action, worried that the calf's calls will alert the mom.
Okay, we'll get our samples real quick.
The veterinarians begin to take their samples as a little male protests.
Well, one of the objects or goals we have for the project on the safety portion of the project is to make sure the vaccine is a live bacteria. Make sure the vaccine does not cause any problems to the dams or the mothers or the calves. Okay.
When all the samples are taken, the little guy is released.
Well, the mother will come back in for him.
Mom's on the way, and the first stressful day of testing newborn calves is over.
Ooh, he wasn't as weak as I thought. He was actually a pretty heavy old boy. Okay, I think our job's done for the day. I think I'll go home and probably die of a slow, hypertensive, cerebral aneurysm. What do you think?
Three weeks later, processing newborns and their moms has become routine. Both sides are a little more accustomed to the rules of the game. By now, all but a few of the cows have given birth. The veterinarian team has perfected the darting technique, and as for the bison herd, well, they've learned to ignore the whole process, placidly feeding while the scientists work the mom and new calf. There's been a few aborted fetuses, a couple of stillbirths, and several weak calves died shortly after being born. But until all the tests are in, there is no way of determining whether these cases were due to the vaccine. So for now, the game stands at a tie. The real victory will be the discovery of a safe vaccine that's an effective instrument in finally eliminating the disease brucellosis in our nation's wildlife.